We just finished up talking about the weight room, so we are going to go on to basic professionalism of teachers.
Oh, sorry, one more thing I'd like.
Yes.
So is the child, are we inviting the child back in, or are we waiting for the child to say, I'm ready? Like, let them kind of figure out on
So
their
we'll
own.
talk much about this on Friday when we do the 1, 2, 3 magic. There is like a key behavioral moment when you realize that the child's really ready to come back to the classroom, and if you don't wait until that time comes, you are more likely to be back there again within 15 minutes. One of the things has to be that they actually truly get out all of the whatever it is that they're doing. Like if they're fiddling around with things, still saying things, begging to go back in the classroom verbally, any of those things, they're still not really ready.
That's what like contrite would be like.
Yeah, there's kind of like a moment of quiet and like, yeah, it is. It's a contrite moment. You realize that they actually realize there's a consequence to what happened. If they're still like in the mode of, or like, you know, bringing back to the classroom or whatever,
How do you do what you say?
you can actually unwittingly reinforce the behavior even more because then they know that they can just be more outrageous and it won't have a consequence.
How do you introduce it to the children? They like.
So we're going to talk about that on Friday when we talk about the 1, 2, 3 magic because that's part of that process. There's a lesson that you give them where you have like a little toy truck and you talk about like red, yellow, and green, how that shows our mommies and pappies when we slow down and we're about to do something dangerous and when we absolutely need to stop because it's really dangerous. So there's like a cute little impressionistic lesson that they do with that gets them kind of knowing what it's about. So obviously going to the white room would be like a red stop. That's like a stop. There may be a stop that you could have in the classroom, kind of like traditionally Montessori speaks in her books about
Like
putting a class.
Isn't that 1, 2, 3? No?
It's a little more complex than that because they treat start behaviors and stop behaviors differently, and that's the real nuance that a lot of people blow. Like a lot of people think that you could do counting or the same type of methods to get kids to do what you want them to do, like start behaviors, but this book helps you understand that that's a completely different set of behaviors that you as a teacher need to encourage. Like in other words, you'd never count to get a teacher to go get a work to do. To get a child to go get a work to do. You only would count to show a child to know that they're about ready to hit the yellow and red. Like what they're doing needs a stop procedure. Like what you're doing isn't helpful or it's going to be hurtful to someone in the classroom. But when you want to get kids to do what you want them to do, which is to transition properly or to be friendly to someone or to take out a work or whatever, you need to use a lot of positive reinforcing behaviors to make that happen, not a negative one. So that's why it's a bit more complicated. So we'll talk about it on Friday. Okay, basic professionalism of teachers. Number 1, substitutes. All of you know that the general amount of sick days for a first year teacher is 5 days, 5 personal and sick days, and then there's 2 observation days, right? Throughout the course of the year. So there are various scenarios where a person might need a substitute. One could be if you knew ahead of time that you needed to go out of town for a wedding, for example, then you would have enough time in advance to find the right substitute. But if a person found out that they were sick and had a fever at 7 o'clock in the morning and they had to be at work in an hour, that's a completely different situation, right? In that situation where you are actually knowing ahead of time that you need a substitute, the responsibility is on you to find the substitute. The way that we have it set up is that there is a substitute Facebook group that you post, like I'm looking for a substitute on the Facebook group, and almost 10 out of 10 you will find someone that way as long as you're giving them at least a day or 2 notice and it's not right before a vacation. Also, Shandel is going to be a permanent sub here, so she could potentially fill in for somebody who needs to. She's coming to the training next week. Right. The blue room's tricky because of her son. Her son's in there. Nahami occasionally also acts as a sub.
Shamel's not working yet? Besides that?
She's just being a substitute this year.
Oh, really?
She's taking some time off to be with her own kids or whatever this year.
Is the substitute list on Facebook, is that just lamplighters or is it like a Crown Heights network?
Yocheved,
It's supposed to just be lamplighters.
I think
Who
it's
typed it?
just for like the next 10 minutes, can you be part of the conversations? Because this is where we're talking about some of the nitty gritty kind of technical things. The first is we're talking about engaging substitutes.
So
ups and downs of last year. I would love to hear like feedback on it. I don't think that it's like exactly.
Well, what
where
we
it
said
needs
is that
to
there's
be.
two different types of situations where you need a substitute. One is where you know ahead of time. Let's say you're going out of town for a wedding and you know like 2
Right.
weeks in advance. The other is a person wakes up at 7 in the morning and they have a fever and they can't. So the one where you have advance notice, the proper amount of notice would be one in which it's like at least a week in advance, you know you're going to be out of town, and you post on the Facebook site, or you go to Shandel, or you go to Zanny, or to Nakami, and one of them can step in and it all gets done
I'd
properly.
say they're probably the first go-to because they're like, we've been in the classroom before, and they're living there, and see
Right.
how everything is done. Messaging.
Now then there's the second tier, which is a person feels sick. I feel that you usually know the night before if you're starting to feel sick. If you are starting to feel sick, usually you could just engage a substitute, like, because you know that there's a chance you might need it, and you could be like alerting the person, right? What happened a lot last year was that the person didn't even notify us until 7 or even 8 o'clock on the day of that they were going to be sick that day, and it's like so impossible to find a substitute who's going to show up 30 minutes later. So I feel that if the day before you're starting to come down with symptoms and you start to feel sick, let's engage the substitute, or at least let them know that we might need them so that we can not be stuck.
And also going back to the long-term stuff, there's a form that has to be filled out. Did you mention that?
No.
There's a form in the office that says like, you know, your name, which class you're in, the dates you're going to be out, who's going to be stepping for you, and all that is important for us. On
It's easier for you.
Well, it's important for us as far as getting inside.
Right.
Good,
How's it going?
Hi.
how you doing?
Great.
It's just important for us as far as like keeping on top of the options like that. So that's really important that staff takes proactive in making sure that those forms are in on time. Again, if we like shift that system in any way, we'll obviously let it go.
And I think those forms have to be, with things to be stopped.
Yeah, I was just
Before it was
where
like,
they're located.
And it seems to
Because if
be
you can't get the form
electronic.
in the day,
I think electronic will probably
Yeah.
be. Again, so we have to tweak this system, and that's like one of the systems that we need to tweak for our bigger picture operational team. Is like, what's the most effective way to have staff notify us and find the staff, the sub, and all that.
I think where our frustration comes in is when we're not notified ahead of time if a person has to go out of town, for example, for a couple of days, or if it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and we're just now hearing that a person's sick and we don't have a substitute. It's very hard because that means like someone's got to change places. It's probably us. Like we have to step in and be a substitute that day, which could make the whole school be a little rocky.
I would love to see some sort of like sub feedback section where
Uh-huh.
like, let's say someone substitutes in your class and she did
That's
an
smart.
awesome job and you really like her.
okay, Yelp. her
Yeah,
subs or
yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly.
Or
Then-
don't ever get that sub again.
Or don't, that's not, because, you know, that
Also,
keeps.
it depends, 'cause I'm saying within preschool class, maybe you could do that, but one teacher who's like not for preschool might be okay for elementary, depending on what the issue is.
So you could say,
Yeah.
No, but there was there was
Yeah, I
one.
know there were
Do you remember there was that one day I brought those parents? We were bringing those parents on a tour, and there was a substitute there, and a child was sitting there crying about something in practical life,
She was just like-
and she was just standing there. She's like, "What's your problem?" And I was like, "What?"
It was really bad.
It was really bad.
Oh, man.
Because that would make us, that would make it that.
And it's not us. That's
give us
not
more
us.
information, make better informed decisions, so.
Sorry, so back to the Facebook group.
Okay.
Is that like what's it called? Because
So
Like,
we'll
if I don't know
invite you,
where you're
we'll invite you to it, we'll invite your,
Oh, okay.
I don't know, again, some Moras are better about using their Mora accounts versus their personal ones, I can invite both of you to it.
yeah, what's
Master sub-list, lamplighter's.
It started off as a lamplighter's only, and then other people started joining, and then we.
Then they started posting the great
Right,
requests
yeah.
for stuff, like, no.
But I think there was an internal discussion
Yeah,
about
we
that.
had a bit like, we had enough like this, whether or not we wanted.
We could be tighter about it and go back to saying
it's a
we're-
closed group though, so make sure you
They have to request to join.
Exactly. So it's your choice.
But that way also, like, if we know that if some subs are like better than others, and they're like, it's
Right.
kind of like,
You could say it on.
yeah,
Right.
right.
You want to take a chair?
Yeah, we're gonna have a start.
Okay, so I
The
think
school's here.
my main point to get across is the earlier the better, and then we can, you know what I'm saying? If something isn't working and you're not finding someone, it's much easier for us to get involved, but like last minute, it's very difficult.
Just going to
So don't feel at all that it's
And that
Don't try that by yourself.
Okay, so if a person has to leave in the middle of the day, sometimes the other two teachers can carry it, depending on what the situation is, or we can juggle people around a little bit. I mean, we are going to have a couple of extra people here in the building. Sometimes Nakami fills in, sometimes Zanny could. You know what I mean? We might be able to do that. Yeah, so again, earlier the better. Like if a person walks in first thing feeling already queasy or they don't feel good and they think they might have to leave for a doctor's appointment, if we know early in the day, then we can try to work it out. The main thing is that we get frustrated when we feel like a person didn't do their due diligence and then it's like sort of dumped on the office. And I think that's frustrating to the office to feel like they're constantly finding subs for people. Okay? All right. Now we're going to look over some of the basic job description of the various roles that are in the preschool and what the various roles are that each person is going to carry. So you two are unique in that you are like co-lead teachers. Gavi is the main lead teacher in the blue room, and she has 2 assistants, right? I mean, that's kind of what we worked out with Cyril. She's still an assistant.
I think it's more complicated when you have like 3 years.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah.
Everyone just switches in and then one person's technically.
Okay, but I think it's very important and imperative this year that the people who are the lead teachers understand where the buck stops ultimately. And in your case, it's a little confusing because you have 2 people there. So you're going to have to navigate how you will work that out together in a very clear way. Otherwise, it won't be helpful. It could be that you'll end up with 2 leaders who don't know who's driving the boat. Do you see what I'm saying? That a little bit happened last year and it wasn't positive. Whereas on your side, it could be that there may be negative feelings toward you for something if the other people are stepping up and taking a greater role, but they don't really know what their real role is. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to have to work on that, I think, actively throughout the year. It's not going to be something we're going to solve right this minute, but I think we do have to look at the job description of what the lead teacher and assistant teachers look like and kind of get our idea as to what the basic ideas are, and then maybe individual people will, cross over, right? Okay, so a lead teacher basically is leading and supervising all of the students in the classroom, preparing the materials, making sure that the systems are working well. So on lead for being the project manager of the classroom, if you will. Basically responsible for the safety and the well-being of the students. That means if the lead teacher sees things that are potentially in the, routine going to the park, or the routine of the way that we're doing things in practical life with certain materials, or whatever it is that could be unsafe or doesn't seem like it's the right kind of process, the lead teacher would be the person who'd say, hey guys, we've got to solve this. And doesn't mean that the person has to totally come up with it in a vacuum, but is in charge of being the buck stops there. Demonstrating to the other teachers and to the children how we relate to one another. So the person really needs to be on at all times of just in all interactions. I think especially with parents, and I think we potentially should add to our list of things to talk about some simulations as to what would be the types of interactions we might have with parents, whether that be at pickup and drop off or phone calls they might make, and how we could potentially develop great relationships with them if we have the right kind of countenance with them. And I'm going to add that to the list because I don't think we have that, right?
No.
Okay.
We have parent communication generally, I think. It was kind of like under regular communication as a side thing.
Unfortunately, parents judge teachers' ability to teach based on the way they interact with them. And it's not fair. A lot of times, a very sweet and gentle and beautiful Montessori teacher would not be appreciated by parents because they think that that person's not bubbly enough with them. You see what I'm saying? So, okay, so demonstrating that. Another thing is being emotionally stable and mature, meaning that at the end of the day, a lead teacher is the one, when all panic has set loose about whatever it is, that takes a deep breath and says, it's all going to be okay, guys, we're going to solve it. We all came in from the backyard, 20 kids are sopping wet up to their waists with water, and we have to change all 20 of them, and it's all going to be good. So having that ability to be like that. Another one is assuming leadership wherever we are in the school and also in the neighborhood. And this is very hard. We live in a fishbowl, meaning when you're shopping at Benzie, people are looking at you and judging you as a teacher. And it's fair or unfair, but it's true.
And the parents will stop you on the street and ask you how their child is doing in school, even if you're not on duty.
And it's totally fine for you to say, I'd love to give you a call later. that to me, that's assuming leadership and demonstrating professionalism when you show like you're not gonna sit and talk about children on the side of the street. But also, and unfairly again, even your interaction with your own children. I know people look at me and how I interact with my children and decide whether or not I'm a good educator based on that. It's fair or not fair, but it's there. So just being cognizant of the fact that people are looking at you. I mean, this is your shluchas. Like, so that means when you're walking down Kingston Avenue, you're being a role model to people who are around you.
Don't throw a fit.
What?
You said don't throw a fit to your children.
That's right, or scream or yell at them or whatever, yeah. Another one is be proactive in your sharing about the methodologies and the curricula that we use here with parents. The person who's the lead teacher is the one who's primarily going to be the one that at the end of the day parents are going to come to and say, why aren't you teaching my 3-year-old reading yet? And you're going to have to not only be able to say, I know your child, I know what your child needs, this is what I think it might be, but we have a reason that we're doing this. And if you don't feel that you can have the words yourself to make that come across, letting me know that you need my help to support that, and I'd be happy to. Like, I'd be willing to be in a joint meeting with you or a meeting with that parent to do that.
You'll discuss, I guess, the assistants after, but like talking to the parents, like.
So oftentimes the assistants are the ones that talk to the parents because they're outside greeting. So like there's a lot of times that there's a little bit of a crossover going on there. I think demonstrating that greeting the child, greeting the parent, but not being the one who's like, if like the parent says, I really have a concern about, we'll talk about it as a team and we'll get back to you, or why don't you email your concern to. So it's the assistants are preserving that set of boundaries that allows you all as a group to respond to the parent on one page, not like all 3 people are talking to parents and like don't know who's talking. And it seems to me that the ultimate conversation or the ultimate email should be written by the lead teacher, but the assistants will be part of the team that decides what you will do. Address school issues immediately. If there is an emergency and a parent is frustrated, let's say there was a moment that someone got hurt this last year.
The marble situation.
Yeah, the marble. Okay, so right away a child swallows a marble. The first thing that should happen is that communication that goes on between the school and the parent. You know, no problem, Ariel swallowed a marble, we've got it under control, either we're calling Hatzalah, or would you like to send a doctor, or would you like to pick her up? But that person who is proactive to make sure that communication happens immediately. The worst thing for me as an administrator is when parents call me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and say, I'm calling about the that happened at 8 o'clock this morning, I don't know anything about it. The communication didn't happen somehow, so err on the side of talking too much. How's that? Next one is have weekly lesson plans, record students' progress. That doesn't mean you're the only ones to do it, but it means you have to make sure your team is doing it. So if 3 people will be giving line lessons that week and you've planned it all out and you know what you're doing for the project and for Parsha or whatever it is, and you know that everybody's going to be recording their MRX lesson plans, you're kind of like maintaining that level of, are we doing it? Do we have it? Do we have the materials we need? Did you do what you need to do? And when it doesn't happen, either address it with the group or step it up to me and say like, oh, I'm having this issue like week after week. People don't seem to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. Could we all have a powwow about it? And let's try to get it all out in the air. And maybe there's some things that I could do to help you guys. Next thing is child communication log for any, this is, I think, a little bit antiquated the way this is described, but every week when we have our meetings, sometimes we'll have them together, sometimes they'll only be every other week, but we'll have an opportunity to nominate those specific kids that are falling in that 2 or 3 children that we're having a very hard time with behaviorally or academically and we're not making progress. Being the person who is keeping a pulse on who those various kids are, what needs to be brought to the attention of the administration or to I think your mom's coming on Fridays to consult for the school on cases of kids who are ones that we're working on behaviorally, letting us know who those kids are so that early enough that we can make something happen right away at the beginning of the year. Newsletters. So every week we publish the newsletter. The newsletter has a little summary of some things that happened that week. It has focus on a couple of children, what kinds of works they're doing, Parsha questions. It seems to me that the newsletter becomes very overwhelming when it's one person's job to do it every week. It needs to be in a rotating fashion so that everyone gets an opportunity to share in the job of doing it. Does everybody feel like that's the right way to approach it?
Can I just
I felt like on the third round of doing the top 5, I was just being competitive. And some years, like for some kids, they spent their whole entire morning in private life. So I just, like as a parent, is that what they want to see? Or like
I
maybe
think
be
it should
more
not.
specific?
I think it should not just be, to me, when I saw like the very best ones throughout the course of the year that were done, they weren't always like worked on this, worked on that. Sometimes it was just a cute little phrase they said, or a little funny anecdote or
So like I
an
did
achievement.
Ones I did like once I like finished the whole cycle, I did like remember I did that like questionnaire. Like,
That's also
like,
cute.
so something like we could switch it up. Do
Switch it
something
up.
Like that.
Absolutely. Let's add newsletter. Maybe that's something that we need to actually discuss the content more of the newsletter so that everybody really knows what they're.
Yeah, I like that there's the only thing the second part is perfect.
Okay. But how about the idea of rotating so that each week a different person does it?
I totally understand.
That means only once every 3 weeks does a person have to do it? Yeah?
So write that down. That's something we need to make sure that our
I'm recording.
friends are on the same page about that.
Okay, rotate with all teachers. Okay. All right, so that's newsletter. The next one is organize work so that daily time is available for record keeping, meetings with assistants, various things like that. All of you, I'm sure, will want to take breaks, regular breaks during the week. So the lead teacher is the person making sure that everyone is taking a break, that there is time built into the schedule for people to do that. Right. So that will have to be kind of a meeting of each individual classroom and talking about the individual needs of the teachers and what times they need to be able to do that and make sure that it happens. Plan and implement a classroom schedule identifying a fair and equitable distribution of job responsibilities. So again, one person isn't doing the entire cleanup at the end of the day and one person is doing the entire setup at the beginning of the morning. If it's done equitably and fairly, then everyone will be sharing the weight and then it won't be overwhelming for anybody. Supervising, guiding the SEATs. So far we have Nahami, who's returning as a SEAT, and we also have Lisa Sutton, who's coming for Cayman. That's in your room, in the Peach room. Rivka Cayman's little brother is coming. Lisa's coming to the training next week, so we will get to know her, and she will know the basics of practical life and sensorial, and he's a 3-year-old. So I will make sure that I put my effort and time into getting her acclimated as to what our expectations are for SEATs in the room. You definitely have the responsibility, and you also have the permission to set boundaries and parameters for SEATs and professionals that work in your classroom. They are not there to do their own thing. And that's why we make sure that the people who come here are people who at least come to part of our training, understand what we're doing here. They're not just people off the street.
No, they've already been working. This student has already been working with them. Like, the parents specifically requested.
Also, Furmi is in your class, so it's tricky. Nahami's daughter's in your class. So she really, I think, needs to work in the blue room.
She doesn't have Benny.
She's working with Nagel, and Benny Baumgarten doesn't have. She's still doing P3 for Benny. Yeah. Okay. Be in attendance at all staff meetings and parent meetings. There are some parent meetings you don't have to come to. They're just like education nights. So those are more optional. Sometimes it's really nice for parents to see teachers come around, but not always. You don't have to always do it. Participate in parent conferences twice a year. We're gonna work on a trimester situation this year. So our first conference will be in the winter in December. The next conference will be in the spring, like in the middle of the spring, and then we may or may not even have a final conference at the end of the year. I'm not sure.
We do it like we did last year. But fine tune it.
It's totally fine with me. It's totally fine with me if you all figure out what your best schedule is for doing the conferences.
So you did it. Maybe you did it faster than we did, right?
Some people did it like where they did only a few people after school multiple times. Some people did it on a Sunday and just did everyone all at once. It's like it's up to you, whatever's good for you. You work it out.
The assistants and the teachers are part of it.
Everybody's part of it because everybody has a lot of perspective. Yeah, you're all teachers during the work period. So return parent phone calls. We have a 24-hour turnaround unless it's an absolute emergency, like my child just went to the hospital or something like that. But if it's an email and it's general concern things or question things, return within 24 hours. Make sure that all the records that the school needs are kept properly. Make sure that you have all the notes or other things that need to be done. Let's say for the state, like I know the state calls every year to like have the teachers get on this phone for anyone who has resources and has to like ask you questions about how the child's doing. Report accidents and incidents. So we have a report form for that. If something happens and a child gets injured, we have to keep a record of it.
I've never seen that in office. I need somewhere to get that. So
They have an accident form that we have not used in MRX, and I think we should just do it there because that's where we keep all our record keeping. It will keep it very. So I'll put that to the MRX part. Report child abuse. If you see children, any of the major signs. Obviously, I should probably give you the mandated reporter packet so you at least know what things you're supposed to be looking for. No, but I just should give you the pamphlet so you know what they are. Follow all the school policies. We're going to go through a few more of the just general things in a minute. Standards for the New York Department of Health, AMS, work cooperatively with co-teachers, and anything else that might come up. Make sense? Okay, so now we're going to...
When is our meeting?
We'll work it out. I'm available, so I work it out with you guys. So here's some assistant responsibilities that are different than lead teachers. So make sure that things are clean and in good order, as is divided according to the labor. Have the right countenance with children, just as lead teachers do. Have the right countenance with children, act joyfully, be a good role model at all times. Have that same emotional maturity and stability. Also be on a cognizant level, be looking for things that may be unsafe or physically not good for your students. And that also means, let's say, for example, outside of park time, watching and being engaged, not being on the phone or doing talking or whatever when it's time to watch what's happening with kids. Address issues immediately when needed. Organize work so that there's time for you to do your record keeping and keep up with MRX and other things that are needed, that are delegated. Be at the meetings. Participate in making the newsletter. Be in communication with your team members about what needs to be done to maintain the processes. Inform lead teachers anytime any parent has showing any kind of concern about anything. That means if you're out and you're greeting them at the beginning of the morning and you see this face in a parent, rumble, rumble, but you don't really know what it is, go immediately to the other teachers and say, I sense something is up, is going on with so-and-so, could you touch base with her? It could be as simple as us sending her an email and saying, hey, we noticed is everything going well with you? Is there any concerns that we could address? You know what I'm saying? You see how proactive we could be with that? So everybody be always your antennas out for what we could do to pick up on that. Following the proper schedule and job responsibilities that everyone has been delegated. Assisting and guiding with substitutes that are in the classroom also. Interacting with them properly, giving them ideas as to what they could do to help. Reviewing the weekly lesson plans with the lead teacher, reviewing new materials that have been put into the classroom so that everybody knows how to teach them and is able to carry out what needs to be done on a weekly basis.
Figure out when that happens. When is a good time for us?
The best time would be in the weekly meeting ahead of time. Let's say if you were meeting on a Wednesday for the next week.
I don't necessarily have all the materials for the whole next week ready.
But let's say it's Wednesday and you're talking about the next week. Wouldn't it be nice if we had the stuff done the Wednesday before the next week?
You're saying all the materials made and everything? And ready on trays to be shown?
Well, if you're doing it on Sunday night before Monday, no one can ever be part of your team.
No, but you'll get an idea, no? It's not like...
I mean, ideally,
So
I
you
would
would
love that. I'm just
explain-
realistically, I don't see how it's going to happen a week in advance of it.
But I think that's an example of something that's a very big difference between a one-person led and a multiple people led classroom.
I mean, I want to share it with everyone, but I'm just trying to figure out how to get it done in a realistic way.
I haven't done it again.
But
Well,
that's
maybe
not-
it also requires that the people who are working on the team also be a little bit open-minded as to let's say you say, for example, I came up with a counting, a memory game work for math, in which we have little felt trees and little counters that are apples, and the children are going to have to put that number of apples on the tree. So let's say she tells you that on the Wednesday before, and then that Monday it's on the shelf. Part of it is a requirement that I guess you, as an additional teacher in the classroom who didn't make the work, to be brave enough to say, okay, I think I get it, you know.
Or if you don't get it, ask.
Or I don't understand.
Right.
Please show me how to use this material.
Right,
I
I'm
would love
saying
to
if
do
it's
it.
like a basic thing that's just like a variation of accounting work or a variation of something we already know how to do,
Right.
rather than just something that's completely new.
Ideas and maybe the first thing makes more.
Right.
Like some of the
Not as spontaneous.
But that's good, and it's also bad when you're working in a team if the
Right.
team members don't feel comfortable with that kind of springing things on them kind of way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna, that's gonna be part of our having to work out interpersonal dynamics probably, because not everybody works well that way.
Right.
When my husband and I were co-teachers in preschool, I did that to him all the time, and it was like his biggest pet peeve of me. Like if he felt like it wasn't his classroom, because I was constantly putting new things all over the place and moving things without discussing it first.
Right.
So.
I feel like that needs to be like discussed more because I still don't feel like we have a like
It's definitely getting-
process of what we're gonna do.
So we're not talking about processes, only expectations, right? Okay. Participating in creating the forms for the parent conferences for presenting to the teachers. Also making sure that all of your observations are in the record keeping system, that you report any accidents that happen, and that you follow all the rules and regulations. Okay? Any questions so far?
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, next thing. Now we're going to take a zoom back to some things that are very, very basic. Employee benefits, just so you know. Again, 5 days you have so far of sick days and personal days, plus 2 days that are observation days. There's a few other things that are outlined here. God forbid if there's a death in the family, jury duty, blah, blah, blah. You could read that on your own. The next thing is attendance. Daily arrival in your contract is set for 8:30, right? Set for 8:30, and school ends for you at 2:30, so 3 o'clock is the official end time of the day.
And school starts at 9, right?
Correct. School starts at 9 and ends at 2:30.
Till 3.
Right. Now, as an aside, obviously, you all know that teaching could be more time than that. It could be less time than that, depending on what responsibilities daily are happening. In the past, we've always had this perspective that as long as the job got done, it didn't really matter if you were here at 8:30 or if you were here until 3 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever.
Right.
I do feel that at the beginning of the year, we should all just say that we're going to follow the time frame regularly, at least for a month or two, to see how that's working out and whether or not that time frame really does cover the job or doesn't cover the job, simply because it can be frustrating for certain people if people just run out at 2:30 and then disappear, and then people thought that they were supposed to be here and there's not proper interactions or whatever. So why don't we all start by just saying we're going to do those hours, and then we'll have a way of measuring after a month or two whether that's working for us? Does that make sense?
Right, or it's not like just sticking around till 3 to be like a body and then be like, oh, I have to leave at 3, but you're just kind of hanging out for a half an hour and just cleaning your area or
Right.
doing the stuff you were supposed to do, and it's like,
Yeah, so the goal is if that 30-minute... I do feel it's reasonable. Those
Sure.
2 30-minute times, if everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're with it, they should be out the door and they should have a life, you know? It's not like anyone's asking you to be here till 9. Staff meetings are once a week. We'll figure out what day is best for you. I'm usually flexible. It's just that I need to get all the classrooms to be at times when I'm not having crossover.
Did you decide already when the staff meetings are?
No, we can all decide together. I mean, you all, first of all, can nominate a time that you think's good for you,
And how
and then
long
I will.
before?
At the beginning of the year, it's longer. It's more like 45 minutes. But then,
it goes into like the very
You have it with everyone together?
No.
Just with like everyone
Oh, our
in the blue
class.
room will
Okay,
have a
fine.
meeting with
Okay,
your
yeah.
staff.
and then toward the end of the year, many times they were spending the hour doing their own thing in the
Right.
classroom, and they didn't need me as
Right.
much. So it's
Or like once
I'm available
once
or not
every other week
available.
or once a month we would have a meeting.
okay. Professional conduct. These are basic things like dress code. This is something I've gotten a lot of flack from the board for, of lamplighters. For female teachers, we must have this, we must have this, we must have tights every day. And I don't want to be the punisher to come and tell people how to dress. So I'm just wanting everyone to follow it with no pushback, because it's a thing that I personally don't find comfortable going and telling people what they have to do. But the school is in a situation, Baruch Hashem, that we're like a Chabad house in Crown Heights. And we have a lot of parents here who do not adhere to all of the various dress code things that we will as teachers, but our doing so will be a wonderful light to other people in our school, and will also prevent us from being judged in certain ways as a school that is watered down when we're not. So I feel like we all have to see ourselves as shluchos and like dress befittingly, and it is what it is. Does anyone have anything to say about that? Okay.
You don't have a uniform?
We have a uniform for girls, starting
No,
with
for
first grade.
teachers.
Not for teachers, but the uniform is that people have to follow the dress code. So
Right, no, right, I'm saying.
shirts, skirts. The other thing is pencil skirts that are super tight and do not allow you to sit on the floor with kids without it constantly riding up to the middle of your thighs or whatever it is going to work. So just people should think through the proper skirts. The other thing is appropriate behaviors in the company of children. Bye!
Bye.
Safe trip.
I don't believe you're really going. I don't believe you're really going. No, I'm just kidding. I'm in denial.
Plane leave. Like, I'm gonna go. You know, I don't think I would have actually left if I didn't have a plane. So he wasn't leaving the country. He's not going back.
That's the only way I can go on vacation is to completely leave, because if I don't go somewhere else where there's no phone coverage, I can't leave work.
Yeah. My friend's like, she's like, I'm taking away your phone. We need like 12, 15.
Anyway.
It's healthy.
We need sure we have Wi-Fi access stuff. So. Yeah. Well, I'll see you.
Have a wonderful, wonderful time.
Hi, little bit of his car in the back.
I'm sure you're going to take gorgeous pictures too.
We're still gonna see you.
The lens broke, yeah. But I bought a new one. Of course. A cheap one, whatever. But, yeah. Well, you can like my page to stay connected.
Okay, we will.
Bye, Kaya. Bye. Thanks, coffee.
Okay, so here's classroom appropriate behaviors. Eating and drinking. It should be done at the snack table, guys. Not like cups all over the top of the bookshelves and, you know, I know. But I'm sure you heard that in your training, that you should do it at the snack table, right? I mean, they didn't say that you could have adult vessels all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that like the coffee cups there should be water bottles all over the place, and there could be like one like I had mine in a designated spot on top of the same shelf. It didn't move around all over the classroom, but like I can't just do it at the same time.
So how about I'm going to leave the water up to you guys, like teacher water. You guys figure out what you want to do, but snacking for sure should be done at the snack table. Okay? Next thing is speech. We should all be talking like this all the time in the classroom. There should never be a reason that we need to shout or raise our voice ever above this level. So that's going to be something that I for sure will give feedback on with my 5-minute like drop-ins for the evaluation, how well we're keeping our volumes down in the classroom.
I saw an app that if it gets above a certain decibel level, it creates an alarm.
Did you ever see the light one, the red, yellow, and green?
No.
They sell it at Lakeshore Learning, and the light goes up and down.
No, but that would be cool because that makes you annoying. That,
It just starts to like change
Now they can
color.
just keep an eye on it, like, oh, it's red. Oh, it's kind of loud in here.
Yeah, and you can set it. There's 4 different settings. How loud is red? Like, okay. The other thing is speech in general to children should be kept positive. We refer to them as children, not kids. Like, have a refined speech just in general with the ways we speak to them.
no,
You know.
friends.
Yeah, friends is beautiful too.
Yeah.
Friends.
We had that last year. I call my niece and nephews friends. Like, it's like, friends.
Yep. Cell phone usage. We are not having cell phones in the classroom. In fact, we're creating a policy this year that teachers may not have cell phones in the classroom at all. We're going to work out how to take pictures. We're going to come up with something that will work for people, whether that means that we're going to take pictures using the iPads in the classroom, or we have some iPods here that also are available to do it. It's too wishy-washy.
Is there a clock in the classroom?
Yeah, there's a clock. If a person has their phone out and they're taking a picture and then it just leads to something else and something else, or just think of it in the eyes of these little children who have to compete with cell phones with their parents all the time. They shouldn't have to do it with their teachers. So it is what it is.
We need uses for timers either because we have to
We'll have timers. We'll get you whatever technology you need to not have to use a cell phone in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think I'll leave my phone here also when I go home.
Maybe we could do long range walkie-talkies or something. We don't have to. I don't know. Park is probably even more like tempting.
And there's a phone in the classroom.
But I feel
I'm
like
saying
We have enough handsets that we could put a
for
handset in every
emergency,
class.
like I'm saying you need.
Yes, we have handsets that we could put in every class. We bought them. We just never used them last year.
okay, but they won't like ring.
No, you could use it for you to call out in an emergency. Okay, babysitting for Lamplighter students, it happens to be a policy that you can't be a babysitter for children who are in the school, just because there's like a crossover of,
Even like if it's not your class. See, I'm not babysitting, but even if it's
I don't know, I never asked
not
about
kids
that.
in your class.
I never asked
right?
about that. It's a good question though. We could find out the answer.
Probably going for Shabbos.
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah, of course, Shabbos meals is fine. But one is like working for the parent and working for the school is like a kind of unusual situation. You know what I'm saying?
Because in a way, if you're like babysitting for another class, you could like get to know other people.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay, I can find out the answer to that. Discussing children outside of school, obviously at community events, shul, birthday parties, chasanas, we can sit and have chit-chatting little parent mini conferences where other people could hear us talking about students. We already talked about that earlier. Okay? Do all of those seem understandable? Does anyone have any questions about them? The other things that we're going to go over for tomorrow are process things like birthdays, other kinds of things, not today. Just we're talking about basic expectations of teachers. Is there anything that you feel that I missed that you want me to clarify, or anything you think might be difficult based on what you know about your situation? No? Okay. Okay, great. So